India's best UPSC interview guidance by former UPSC board members. 5-pronged approach includes DAF briefing, one-to-one sessions, regional information guidance, feedback by a psychologist, mock interview mimicking the actual interview by former UPSC board members only at KPIS Delhi. This is the guidance by the best to ace the UPSC race. WhatsApp your DAF to 9133957733 now.
Hello and a very warm welcome to KPIS Delhi. This is Anil Kumar and I welcome you all to the C.A.R.E initiative, Current Affairs through Reverse Engineering. So let me give you a walkthrough of important issues that came up in today's newspaper dated 5th of January 2024. The first issue that we are going to discuss is regarding the status of higher education in India. It forms part of your polity and governance, which is your GS paper 2. This particular article is talking about the status of higher education. It has become out of touch with the skill requirements that are required in the job market, which means that there is incongruence or there is mismatch between the graduates who are coming out of colleges and the demand that the job market is expecting out of this particular individual. So there is mismatch between these two aspects. So there is skill deficit. There is requirement of certain skill set which is lagging in these particular graduates. That's the first issue that we are going to cover up. Next, important issues which are important from the prelims perspective are regarding the wetland city accreditation. So, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has submitted its recommendations or proposals with respect to identification of certain wetlands which are part of Ramsar Convention as wetland of city accreditation. So we'll be looking into this particular aspect as well. Next is Rashtriya Khel Protsahan Puraskar. Recently, the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports has announced these awards for the year 2023. Last issue that we are going to take up today is the Kadamba inscription and Mahadev temple. This is a new inscription which has been found in Goa recently, which belongs to 10th century. So these are the issues that we are going to cover up. So let us begin our first important issue, which is regarding the status of higher education. So what is this whole issue of education? Because we have education is very important aspect with respect to UPSC. Numerous questions across several years, questions have been asked in your mains as well as in your prelims as well. Because we have a lot of recommendations which are suggesting a lot of reforms have to be done with respect to transforming the education sector in India. So initially, if you look at the education as a separate subject, it comes under your concurrent list, where the central government as well as the state government have rights to pass any sort of legislations. So with respect to education, till 1986, if you talk about education, you have something called as National Policy on Education. That is the policy which has been in existence. Later to that, in the year 2009, we have brought in something called as Right to Education Act with 86 Constitutional Amendment Act. Everyone is pretty much aware of this fact. So when these two were in picture, the primary aim objective of education is to provide accessible and equity with respect to education. The basic purpose of education is to be accessible and is to provide equity. Accessibility means it is some sort of availability which is available for every individual or every citizen of this country. Ensuring equity means to ensure fairness among various sections of the society. This has been the primary objective of education. Now recently, everywhere, when you talk about education, the buzzword is NEP, which came up in 2020, New Education Policy or National Education Policy. So now the focus of education earlier has to be guided by two important aspects: access and to ensure equity. Now, the objective has been transformed into quality education. The education that is provided has to be qualitative. Quality education is the need of the hour. So, now in this backdrop, what is the status of higher education? The author in this particular article is having a conversation with another person where they are talking about certain important numbers, certain important statistics, and certain important facts which has to be taken into considerations. There have been various reports that are published by various private entities which says that less than half, which means less than 50% of the graduates were unemployable in the year 2021. So whoever are educated, less than 50% of them are employed. They are not finding adequate job. They are not having that skill set to find a job in the market. That is what these reports, several reports has pointed this. So what are the concerns for this lack of employability among the graduated people of this country? One such concern can be attributed to the COVID-19, the pandemic days. So, last 2 years, if you could imagine, we have been in this momentary phase of COVID-19, the pandemic. So, there are concerns over COVID-19 pandemic. But the highest education status report cannot be attributed only to this pandemic. Why? Because students' enrollment, the problem of higher education students being enrolled to the courses has been there before COVID also. So, with the advent of COVID, there has been something called as penetration of online learning or online education. The quality of online education has been intensified or increased. So, whether it is qualitative education or not is not a primary aspect because there is no scope, there is no option. Despite that, you cannot attribute the status of employability only to COVID 19 or only to online education. These are not the primary reasons. Even before the online learning has took off, it is important for us to understand that the higher education which has been existence in India has abysmally seen only 20 to 30 percentage of admissions, which means only 20 to 30% of the people opted for higher education depending upon their income, depending upon their various social economic factors, income distribution, whatever. Relatively well off people only opted for higher education. So higher education employment rates are still about 27% only. It is around 27% only. In 2012, the employment rate among the graduates was 20%. But now this unemployment rate among the graduates has shot up to 34%. In over a decade, in over 10 years, this unemployment rate has shoot up to 34%, which is very much a serious concern. It identifies the quality of education, higher education that we are undergoing. If you look at the statistics of postgraduates, the postgraduate students, the employability rate is somewhere around 18% in 2012, and in 2022 it is 37%, almost more than doubled. So these are the staggering figures that has to be taken into consideration. So there are various reasons that are attributed to this abysmal performance of higher educational institutions. The major factor has been the employability. Whenever you talk about this employability, there are various issues that are attributed to employability. So, what can be why people are unemployed? Why educated people are not getting jobs, even despite creating some sort of educational background? So, This brings us to the next discussion. You can say it does not require only skill set. Even the performance of economy might also impact the status of employment. So, if you consider India, India is basically an agrarian nation. Agriculture is still the largest employment providing sector for our country. But the share of manufacturing sector is providing certain jobs is also coming down. So, how the skill enhancement in these institutions of higher educations brings about a primary change? That is the thing which you need to identify. So, when you identify or analyze this particular issue, there are certain structural problems that are associated with this higher education sector. One such important structural problem is our research and development, our R&D team. When you look at this research and development expenditure, the proportion of expenditure that we are spending on R&D with respect to higher education is only 0.7% of our GDP, which is very below compared to various developing countries. So, if you consider a country like Korea, they are spending somewhere around 4% of their GDP on research and development. So, that is the first important structural factor. Secondly, the contribution of the private sector, the private or the corporate sector. Globally, if you could see, the private or corporate sector almost accounts to 70% of total R&D expenditure. Whatever expenditure is incurred, 70% is going through the private sector, but only 30% goes to government. But in India's case, the public sector or the government is spending 70% of this amount into R&D, and abysmal number of 30% is going into private sector research and development. This is the second important structural bottleneck. Third is, unlike the rest of the world, the most research basically takes place in universities. But in case of India, there are certain institutions, something called CSIR or Medical Council of India. You have certain institutions where all this money is being diverted, public institutions, which is 70% of this money is getting diverted into this public institutions. This public research institutions does not have any sort of mechanism to translate this research into reality or the actual output. So this is another important problem. So finally, if you could observe, fourth important structural problem can be our country still do not have any sort of industrial policy or any sort of manufacturing strategy which is helping our country to absorb the high value services. So these are the various factors. So there are various concerns which are associated, structural concerns which are associated with this higher education. So after looking into this, our employability is predominantly dependent on various aspects. So as I have told you, there is learning deficits. Because of this learning deficits, there is mismatch between the skill requirement as well as the skill that an individual possesses. So there is learning deficit between the education sector and the demand of the markets. Second is, the nature of the jobs has also been changed or transformed, because the rote learning concepts which has been traditionally followed by various higher educations has not been practically applicable in the current contemporary markets. So the rote learning, the nature of jobs, the role has been changed, the technological advancement has come. So there has to be congruence between the industries and higher educational institutes. Only if this collaboration happens between these two, you can avoid this disconnect between the skill set and the required skills. And another important factor could be the R&D, which has not been given predominant importance, because less than 1% of GDP has been going into this research and development. Only if there is enough emphasis on this research and development, then only you can bring in various technologies. If latest technologies have been innovated or brought in for application, then you can provide employment to your people. So this has a detrimental effect. So this also needs to be taken into consideration. So these are the various factors which has led to unemployment or factors inhibiting employability for the youth. So what are the impacts because of this mismatch between the higher educational institutions and the job markets, which made the individuals unemployed? What is the major important thing is, it forms a vicious cycle. As I told you, if a person is having low skill, vicious cycle means one cause or effect aggravating the other. If you are having low skill, this low skill will obviously leads to low level of income. When you are having low level of income, your socio-economic status in the society decreases. When there is lack of opportunities for you, your socio-economic condition is bad, obviously you lead to, or you look for opportunities somewhere where your skill set is required. So you adhere to something called as migration or brain drain, whatever happens. So whenever this is happening, there is pretty much disregard among the people of this country regarding higher education. When there is no scope for research or interest to pursue higher education courses, your enrollment ratio will be low. When there is low enrollment ratio, your skill development will be reduced. This is the vicious cycle that we will witness because of incongruence between the higher educational institutions' performance, the skill sets that the people are having, and the requirements within the job market. These are the important aspects which you need to take into consideration. So there are various measures which are taken by our governments. Successive governments has taken various measures. Some measures could be regarding the National Education Policy 2020. One important or landmark measure is National Education Policy. So this National Education Policy has stipulated certain reforms with respect to higher education. One such comprehensive reform has been to include technical education in order to increase the enrollment ratio. The gross enrollment ratio in higher education has to be 50%. We need to achieve 50% gross enrollment ratio by the year 2035. That's the target which was stipulated in National Education Policy. So in order to reach this milestone of 50% of gross enrollment ratio, focusing on certain areas or aspects is very much important. Student-centric approaches has to be adopted. Faculty empowerment has to happen. Even opportunity for digital learning should also take into picture. Next important area is establishment of NRF. NRF stands for National Research Foundation. So this National Education Policy proposes for the creation of National Research Foundation to fund relevant research and connect the industry and academia, and also the ministries as well, various skill development ministries. The threefold approach has to be adopted. There has to be a National Research Foundation which has to fund for research, which connects the academia, which connects the industry, and connects the relevant ministries as well. And next important initiative under this National Education Policy is establishment of new governance model. So this new governance model is granting certain graded autonomy. So it is providing certain autonomy which involves the alumni of those particular higher educational institutions and experts of that institutions in managing higher educational institutions to function effectively to ensure quality education. This is another important aspect. Next important aspect is increase budget allocation. Budget allocation has to be increased. So there has to be a fixed percentage of funding that has to be gone into the education sector or higher education sector. At least for education, our target is around 6% of GDP every financial year has to go into education. 6%. This is the target which was put forth under National Education Policy. And finally, with respect to higher education, another important aspect is internationalization of education, because we are living in a globalized world where the whole world is interconnected, which encourages researchers, which encourages exchange of information with foreign higher educational institutions as well, to establish some campuses abroad as well. So sharing of information will happen. So these are the key important aspects that has to be taken into consideration with respect to higher education, status of higher education, in order to intensify, in order to ensure qualitative approach of functioning of higher education. The new education policy has proposed all these measures. So now, going further, let us see a multiple choice question with respect to this particular issue. Consider the following statement with respect to National Education Policy NEP 2020. As I told you, National Education Policy aims to increase the gross enrollment ratio in higher education to not 60%, it is 50% by the year 2035. Statement 1 is wrong. So 1 is eliminated. So option A and option C are gone. Next is all 3 are gone because all the above are also not correct. So you are left out with 2 and 3. That's the answer. The policy proposes the establishment of an RF National Research Foundation to fund the research that aligns with local needs and connects academia and industry. I told 3-pronged approach. Next is National Education Policy 2020 also includes provisions of new governance model for higher education institutions involving autonomy and management of independent bodies. These 2 are correct. So similar question has also been asked in the year 2017 in UPSC exam. The program which is related to Unnat Bharat Abhiyan. Unnat Bharat Abhiyan. This is basically a program which is connecting the higher educational institutions and local communities to address socio-economic developmental challenges through appropriate technologies. So integration of higher educational institutions with local governmental needs. That is the objective of this Unnat Bharat Abhiyan. So now, moving ahead, let us discuss about the second important issue. The second issue is regarding Wetland City Accreditation, WCA. What is this wetlanding? So the central theme of this particular issue is recently the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has submitted 3 nominations for identifying certain wetlands as Wetland City Accreditation from the city of Madhya Pradesh, Indore and Bhopal. These both of them belongs to Madhya Pradesh, and the other one is from Udaipur from Rajasthan, which are under the Ramsar Convention of Wetlands. This forms part of your GS paper 3. So now here you need to understand what is this WCA, Wetland City Accreditation. Wetland City Accreditation is basically a voluntary scheme. First important point to be noted, it is a voluntary scheme which provides opportunities for various cities that value their natural as well as human-made wetlands to gain international recognition for these wetlands for their efforts in conservation or preservation of these wetlands. So the basic purpose of this Wetland Conservation Authority is to protect and to conserve urban and peri-urban wetlands. Peri-urban means the adjacent areas to the city. They are known as peri-urban. So protection and conservation of urban and peri-urban wetlands is the primary purpose of this wetland city accreditation. So if you get this recognition, you will be internationally recognized, your city will be developed, you will also have certain international or global recognition, positive publicity for your efforts in conservation of these particular wetlands. So the origin of this WCA has been in existence in 2015 when Ramsar Convention was happening, the 12th Conference of Parties, the COP12. In that particular COP12 meeting, you have adopted this wetland city accreditation scheme. So identification has been, the genesis has been the COP12 summit. So what are the various focus areas? Because if you have identified any particular wetland as wetland of city accreditation, obviously, as I told you, it focuses on urban wetlands, it promotes conservation, and it provides certain socio-economic benefits. It includes various wetlands, and it is voluntary and beneficial for the city as well. So in order to get all these benefits, the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has submitted proposals for nominating 3 Indian Ramsar Convention on Wetland cities. So what are these 3 cities? Number 1, as I told you, one is from Indore. In Indore, you have a wetland called as Sirpur wetland and Yashwant Sagar. So these 2 particular Ramsar sites are very crucial to this city of Indore. So they play a very vital role in flood regulation, they provide certain livelihood opportunities, and they also hold certain recreational and cultural significance as well. So Sirpur and Yashwant Sagar, both these wetlands are identified for WCA from the city of Indore in Madhya Pradesh. Next city is the Bhopal, which is also from MP, Madhya Pradesh. In Bhopal, you have a wetland named Boj wetland. So this particular Ramsar site is also integral to this city's ecological and cultural fabric, offering the same benefits as a normal wetland: flood regulation, providing livelihood opportunities, as well as holding certain recreational and cultural significance. Next important, the third important proposal which was made for WCA is from Udaipur in Rajasthan. This particular wetland has been known for its picturesque lakes. This wetland in Uttar Pradesh in Rajasthan is identified for its picturesque lakes, in which the Udaipur forms a vital part of ecosystem, supporting various socio-economic activities. So these are the 3 important wetlands which have been identified and submitted by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. So now let's see a question with respect to this particular wetland city accreditation provisions under the Ramsar Conventions of Wetlands. So the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change in India has nominated Indore, Bhopal and Udaipur for wetland city accreditation, marking the first ever nominated from India for this accreditation. Yes, this statement is absolutely correct. It is the first ever accreditation that has been sent by India. So this statement is true. Second, Indore is recognized for Sirpur wetland and Yashwant Sagar, both in which is designated Ramsar sites as integral part of its ecosystem. This statement is also true, as we have Enough discussion on this. Third is Udaipur is known for its historical architecture. No. As I told you, it is known for its picturesque lakes, which provide certain socio-economic benefits. So statement 3 is wrong. If you could avoid statement 3, you're left out with option A, 1 and 2. Similar sort of questions has also been asked in UPSC regarding the wetland conservation. You can go through this particular MCQ as well. Next important issue that we are going to discuss is regarding Rashtriya Khel Protsahan Puraskar. So these are the awards which were given by Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports for the year 2023. So basically the Rashtriya Khel Protsahan Puraskar is given for whom? Is it given only for public sector or private sector is also included in this? You need to be sure that both public sector and private sector, all the corporate entities are part and parcel of this Rashtriya Khel Protsahan Puraskar. It can include public as well as private sectors. It can include certain sports control boards. It can include certain NGOs and including various state level and national level sports bodies or sports authorities who have showed an exemplary role or a visible role in the area of promotion of sports and development. That is the major important objective for awarding this Rashtriya Khel Protsahan Puraskar. So it is announced by Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports. So when you talk about the awards with respect to sports, whenever you talk about India's national sports awards, we often hear 6 core awards that are accorded to sports. One is your Major Dhyan Chand Khel Ratna Award, or you simply call it as Khel Ratna. You often hear about this Arjuna Award, the Dronacharya Award, Major Dhyan Chand Award, and finally the Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad Trophy. All these are the various trophies. And finally, you are left out with Rashtriya Khel Protsahan Puraskar. These are the 6 awards which are predominantly confined to Sports Affairs, Ministry of Affairs and Sports. So under this particular Rashtriya Khel Protsahan Puraskar, this year the recipients who claimed or bagged this award are very important. In 2023, for identification and nurturing of young talent in sports, this award has been given to a Jain university, a deemed university from Bangalore. And encouragement of sports through corporate social responsibilities has been backed by a mining company from Odisha Mining Corporate Limited. These 2 entities are the recipients of Rashtriya Khel Protsahan Puraskar. You need to remember this because if you see this particular question, in the year 2023, UPSC has reversed its trend, has changed its trend. We often ignore any sort of news concerning sports, but it has asked in the year 2022. So nothing can be ignored. Everything under the sun is important for your examination point of view. So you cannot ignore sports as well. So that is why we have covered this. So let's go through this particular question. Consider the following statements with regard to Rashtriya Khel Protsahan Puraskar. It is given to both public as well as private entities. As I told you, it is true. It is awarded to those who played a key role in the area of sports promotion and development. Obviously, it is correct. Third is Rashtriya Khel Protsahan Puraskar 2023 is awarded to Odisha Mining Corporate Limited. 3. How many statements given above is or are correct? All the 3 statements are correct. Here the answer is option 3. Similar question has been asked in 2023 as well with respect to 44th Chess Olympiad which has happened. So try to answer this particular question as well. Moving further, the last issue which is important from your prelims point of view is regarding the Kadamba inscription The 10th century Kadamba inscription, which was written in Kannada and Sanskrit, was found in Goa. It forms part of your GS paper 1, Indian culture, art forms, literature, architecture, whatever. So what are these Kadamba inscriptions? That is what you need to understand. So as I told you, a inscription called as Kadamba inscription has been found. This Kadamba inscription was written in two languages. One is Kannada and the other one is Sanskrit, and it belongs to 10th century AD. So this has been discovered in the premises of Mahadev temple. Major important point. Mahadev temple at Kakoda in South Goa. This inscription has been found. So this inscription, it records the accounts of the death of Gunadhyaya. Gunadhyaya is a person who has captured the fort of Goa. So this Kadamba inscription is related to the death of Gunadhyaya. So you need to understand who are these Kadambas. So when you talk about Kadambas, they ruled this particular region called Goa from almost 10th century to 14th century AD. And their capital, when Kadambas were ruling, their capital city has been Chandor, or you can also call it as Chandor, and another capital city is Gopakapatnam. These are the two capitals under which the Kadambas have ruled. So the Kadambas of Goa were basically the subordinates of Chalukyas. This is another important feature. They are subordinates of Chalukyas of Kalyana, who rose into power or who came to power in Goa. So Chalukyan Empire, Talipa II has appointed these Kadambas Shastadeva as Mahamandaleshwara of Goa for his help in overthrowing Rashtrakutas. When Chalukyas wanted to overthrow Rashtrakutas dynasty, he took the help of Kadambas, and this Chalukyan emperor called Talipa II has appointed Kadamba Shastadeva as Mandaleshwara of Goa in overthrowing the power of Rashtrakutas from Goa. So Kadamba Shahastadeva conquered the city of Chandavara from Sihilars in this particular 10th century. Later, he conquered the port city of Gokapatnam, which later or presently called as Goa. This is very important. So according to another inscription called as Talagunda inscription, which is found in Shimoga in Karnataka, the Kadambas are considered as descendants from Maurya Sharma or Mayura Varma, who is founder of this particular dynasty. So Kadamba is descendant from Mayura Sharma or Mayura Varma. So the founder of Kadamba dynasty is Mayura Sharma or Mayura Varma. These are the important points which you need to consider. So now if you look at the multiple choice question which was given here, Gunadhyaya was the founder of Kadamba dynasty. Is it true? No. As I told you now, this is not correct. Kadambas ruled with Shimoga as their capital. Is it correct? What I told you? Is their capital Shimoga? No. It is Chandor and Gopaka Patanam. It is not Shimoga. Next, third statement, it is talking about Kadambas were subordinates of Rashtrakutas. Obviously, Kadangas, as I told you, they are subordinates of Chalukyas of Kalyana. This is not correct. So your answer here is none. Similar question, who among the following laid the foundation of Rashtrakuta Empire? In your history, you will be learning about Rashtrakuta Empire. It is founded by Danti Durga. So with this, we came to an end of today's session. See you tomorrow and all the best.